Shout out to Robert Bazaki on Patreon for 2 months of support. Get weekly goods, tutorial files, mockups, templates, items from my store, and more, as well as supporting the free tutorials on this channel. Check out my Patreon in the description below. What's up guys, Qehzy or Noah here bringing you guys another tutorial. Today I'm going to be showing you how to create your own Twitch stream package in Photoshop. Now I'm not going to be covering everything in a Twitch stream package because certain people need certain things, but this is the basics and should be able to get you started. Or if you're a designer and you just want to know how to design this, this tutorial will also show that process. But I'm going to be showing you how to create a header, avatar, a Twitch banner. The header, by the way, is a Twitter header, a face cam, some panels, and like a stream is starting or ending display screen. So all that stuff is going to be covered here. No animation stuff, but this is like a good, simple, basic package, I would say. And I did this for my buddy Logan, and you can see this is the final product. We got the header, banner, the panels, the avatar, face cam, and the stream is starting stuff. And I think this design is really nice, but it's also pretty simple to complete. I will be using some of my own brushes in my brush pack, but other than that, there's nothing you really need. There is a plugin that I use later on, which you can add to your Photoshop pretty easily, but that's about it. If you want these files to download, by the way, if this video hits 100 likes, I will make them available to download. Also, they are available on my Patreon right now. And there's actually going to be 2 header files. So there's the header with all the face cam and stuff, and then there's also this test one that I did as a warm-up. So that'll be available there as well. If you guys are interested in supporting the channel and the Patreon, that'd be great. Also, if you guys wouldn't mind giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel for more tutorials. I cover a lot of different things, and I have some more stream stuff on the way, including some animated stuff, which should be a fun time. But anyways, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to close out of these real quick, and we're going to go ahead and create a new document. Now, I'm going to be creating a Twitter header first because it's a nice big size and everything will transition well to everything else. So the Twitter size is 3000 pixels by 1000 pixels with a resolution of 300. And yeah, that's about it. Let's go ahead and click create. I'm going to double click the background and click OK. And it doesn't really matter what your background is because we're going to be adding a gradient right away. So double click your background, go to a gradient overlay. So we want the blend mode to be normal and at 100%. And then click your gradient, just click anywhere on the gradient. This will pop up. And I already have the gradient saved for this to cut down on time because this will be a long tutorial. And we're going to use this dark one. So the first color here, if you just select the bottom point, so you want to select just a simple gradient, the first one probably, and then click the bottom color here to change it. And the first color we want is 03060E, and click OK, and then click your second color, and this is going to be 141C2A, and then click OK. So now we have that gradient, and to save it here you want to go here to new, and you just go to new and it'll add it. So now I have 2 here. I'm going to go ahead and delete one. And then we'll get to these other 2 gradients later on, but click OK when you're done. And then you can change the angle to whatever. You could have it at 0 or like slightly angled like that. You don't want it to be up and down. You want it more on the side. So something like that will work. I'll do 11. And okay, we'll click OK then. And we'll go ahead and add our text. So get the text tool. And you can add a guide here if you like. So if you press Command R, you'll get these rulers and you can click and drag one of these guides from the left, and it should click into place in the middle, which is 1500 pixels. And then click right in the middle there for our text. And I'm just going to do Logan text. I'll make the same thing I made before. Double click on it, make the text white. And the font I'm using is called Pantone. And it's a really clean font, and we're using the black italic caps version of it. And you can see the size of this text right now is 62.5. That might be a little big, but let's drag this down and center it real fast. We'll get a pink line when it's in the middle horizontally. Press Command T and then hold Alt, and we'll make it slightly smaller for now. We might change it later. And then to hide that guide, we can go to Command H. But we're going to want it real fast, so click the bottom background layer and come over to, it should be the rectangle tool, but we want to go to the rounded rectangle tool. Get that and click in the middle and then hold Alt and drag out and create like a pill type shape. And we want it to be about that big. So this is 1320 width and 348 height. And something like that. It might be a little big, but I think that's fine. We'll rock with it. And what we want to do is double click on that guy and get the gradient overlay, and we want the same one. And then you can just click OK. And then you want to immediately duplicate that one, and then the bottom one you want to go to, press Command T, hold Alt, and increase the size of it. And it'll blend in, and we can hit Command H now to hide that, but we want to double click on that and reverse the gradient. So just bring this little line to the other side. And it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be rough so you can tell the difference between them. And then let's zoom in here, press Command T again, and let's even up everything around the outside. So you can see the outside left and right, it's a little too thick, so let's click on one of these points, hold Alt and Shift, and bring it in until everything is about the same width, which I think it is there, but I actually want it to be slightly thicker. So let's hold Alt and Shift again, increase it to about there, and then hit Enter. I'm going to press Command 0 to zoom out, and that's pretty good. Now let's duplicate this bottom one, and then we don't have to worry about this bottommost one, but let's name a couple of these. So this is going to be dark, and then this will be dark behind, and then we're going to call this one blue, this new one that we can't see yet. But we're going to go ahead and drag this blue one down a little bit. And I'm holding Shift while dragging that down so it stays in line. Double click the blue layer, go to the gradient, and click the gradient. This time we want to use a blue gradient. So I'm going to click this one I have saved here. And the colors for this one are hex code 209CFF, which is a nice blue. And then we have this like greenish, like seafoam green almost. And this is 68E0CF. And then again, you want to add that to new, so it's saved. And again, the angle of this could be whatever, but click OK. And we're going to duplicate this again. I like to bring the copy below so I can just take the copy and rename it to behind. And drag that one down a little bit and do the same thing where we flip the gradient. And I'm holding Shift to get it at perfect 0 and 180, by the way. And maybe we bump that down slightly more. Actually, let's bring it up slightly and then select both blues. And I'm just using the arrow keys to move this up. So yeah, that's a pretty good thickness. I'm pretty happy with that. Let's zoom out here a little bit. And yeah, we're pretty good. Now I'm going to go back to the text here. I'm just going to double click it, and I'm going to select half of it, so the last two letters. Which is technically less than half because it's an odd number of letters, but let's click color and grab one of the darker blues in the blue. Not the green, we want more of the blue. And then click OK. And that just kind of makes the text a little more interesting. And we'll add something a bit later on that will overlay that to make it look even better. So let's select everything but the background layer by holding Shift, and then group it with Command G. Double click to rename it, and we're going to call this text group. And cool. Now we want to go ahead and create a bunch of shapes in the background. So go to the background and create a new layer. Get your pen tool here, and we're going to create some custom shapes. Now, I also used some of my brushes to do this, but I figure I will show you the pen tool at this step and then use the brushes later on to save on some time. But I want to show you the pen tool in case you don't have any brushes that work with this. So basically, we're going to grab the pen tool. I'm going to zoom out a little further with Command minus, and I'm going to create a shape that covers about half of the canvas. So I'm going to click in the top left, click in the middle, and create like a bended spline here, and then I'm going to have it cut off in the bottom right. So it's about half the canvas, and we're going to go ahead and close it like this. Now we could right click and fill it with whatever color, but we want to edit these anchor points later on. So if we go down to solid color and add that, click OK, right click, delete path, we can come back and edit these lines. So if I click this layer, you can see the points come up. And if I press Command with the pen tool, I can then Command and click these points and move them around. So that's why we're doing it like that. But this is the blue layer, okay? And then let's go ahead and create a new layer. And we want to create a couple white layers. So we'll create one that kind of follows. Let's get a little closer. Create one something like this. So it's like the top part, it's pretty big. Let's go down to solid color, and this time we're going to get white. Right click, delete path, and I'm actually going to modify this a little bit because I think it looks a little wonky. Okay, I think that's a little better. Let's create another new layer and create another shape. I'm gonna make a bit of a thinner white one over here. Just a pretty simple one. Something like this maybe. A little wonky. Solid color, white. And we're gonna make another white one on the bottom. Let's actually delete the path first, and we'll do something like this maybe. I think that's pretty cool. And this is white. And then we have one more that we want to do. Delete this path. I'm actually going to move this over slightly. And I'm going to press Command T to transform and click and hold Shift and kind of bring this in to make it a little smaller. Okay, that's good. And then create another new layer, and the last one is going to be a dark one, which will just kind of be on here. Cool. And then create the solid color, and this time just click the background color, click OK, right click, delete path. Okay, so that's all the different shapes set up that we want. You can add more, but I felt like this is a pretty good balance. I might actually get this white one and move it up just a bit because I want a little more blue. And maybe we even move the blue down a little bit. Because I want a good bit of blue for the step after the shape step, which you'll see in a second. But now we want to add our gradients to all these. So double click the blue one, go to the gradient. We already have our blue gradient, so that's nice. But let's, actually we'll leave it at this angle. Maybe move it slightly down a little bit. That's pretty good, click OK. And then I'm going to go to the dark one, which is the top one, and add that gradient, which we have saved here. And we'll just have this go at 0 degrees, click OK. And then we want to add our new gradient to the white ones. So double click one of the white ones, go to gradient. And again, I have this one saved, but you guys don't. So let's click this, and the first color is just pure white. So just go ahead and get 6 Fs. And then we want this slightly bluish white, which is D7FFFE. And click OK. You could also move this up to be slightly bluer, up to you. I have it more on the greenish side, but it should work regardless of what you want to do. And we'll leave that at 0 degrees as well. Right click and copy that layer style. And then you can click and hold Shift on the other 2 layers, right click and paste layer style. And that'll save you some time. But I do want to come into maybe this second one and reverse the gradient just so they're not all the same. And there we go. Now we want to duplicate these all and mess around with them a little bit. So let's go to the blue one first, and you'll see how this step works before I fast forward through it. But we're going to press Command J on this blue layer and it will duplicate it. Then we want to get the pen tool again, and you can see we can edit this path. So let's get one of these corners, holding Command, let's like alter it. And if we do that, this is going to be the new shape. Let's grab the other bottom one and maybe we'll do something like this. Maybe we make this a little more extreme. Bring this in a little bit. Okay, cool. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to command click off, and you can kind of see it, but what we want to do is come in, double click on that layer, flip the gradient to go to the other side, click OK, and now you can see we get this nice gradient look within these shapes. And you could duplicate that and do it a third time if you like. I found that it got a little too much doing that, but we want to do that to each one of these. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of speed through this so you guys can see what I'm doing, but I don't want to waste too much time. Let's duplicate this white one and kind of do the same thing. By the way, you don't have to alter the path every time. You could come in and press Command T and just like move it down if you want. Actually, I had a point selected there. You have to have no point selected, and then you can like drag it down. And that's another simple way to do it. Okay, and there we go. Now I want to go ahead and group these all together with their copies. So I'm just selecting them with Shift and pressing Command G to group them. And I'm going to name them, so this is going to be blue, big white, white left, white bottom, and then dark. And then we want to select all of those, holding Shift, and group them, and call them shapes. And the reason we group them and name them like that is if we want to make some changes. So if we want to make a change to the dark one, we know where to find it. We can come in and make those changes pretty easily. It's nicely organized. We have one last thing to do here, and that is to add that same effect to the background layer. And since the background doesn't have any shape layers, we're going to have to create our own shape. So let's create a new layer, get the pen tool, and just kind of follow some of the dark edges and sort of intersect them like so. So we'll do something like that here. And maybe we cut through here, come around, cut through this one, like so, and we'll come around to the top and close it off. And we can do a solid color here as well. Click OK, right click, delete path, and then copy the background layer style, right click, paste it, double click to open it up, gradient overlay, and flip it. Cool, now that's everywhere, and that background looks pretty cool, but obviously it's not going to be our finished background because the next step is to select the shapes group all the way down to the background, press Command J to duplicate, Command E to merge, Command A to select, Command C to copy, and Command V to paste. And what that did was it just basically gave us one layer with that background, but it's cropped very nicely. You can see this other one is not cropped. It's got everything spewing over the edges, which we don't want. We just want this, which is now on layer 1. So I'm going to delete this guy and make this visible again, but this is the one we want to work on, layer 1, and we're going to call this Liquify. And what we're going to do with that is go to Filter and Liquify and give a light Liquify effect to this to make it a little more interesting than what we created with our pen tool. So get this twirl one, and you can copy my settings here. So we're at like a 1900 size, 50, 80, 100. I think those are all standards. And let's lightly do this. So I'm going to go back and forth a little bit. I think that looks pretty good. Maybe do a little more. Okay, that's pretty cool. Let's click OK, see how it looks. I'm kind of liking that. I think let's try to press Command T, right click, flip vertical, and I think that looks even better. Hit enter, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I think that looks good. You could duplicate this a few times and give it a few tries. So if I press Command Z, I'm gonna duplicate this real quick and then go to Filter, Liquify to reapply it real fast, and then reflip it. So this is option 1, but I could come back in here and try this again. Press Command minus to zoom out once, and let's give it another go. That's a little too much for me. Let me restart. That one's okay. I'm not gonna keep it though. Let's try one more. Maybe we go a little smaller of a brush. So that one's pretty cool too, and that's like a nice central look. I'm not sure which one I like better. I think I actually like this one better. I wonder if it looks better flipped. I kind of like that the best. Okay, so I'm gonna go with this one. We can leave this one here because we could always come back. You might want to leave a normal merged version of this in case you want to keep trying liquefies, but we'll move on and call it a day there with that. And now we want to go to the very top and create a new layer. Now I'm going to start using my brush pack with some of the blob shapes I have. You don't have to buy my brush pack and use them. You can just use the pen tool and continue, but the pen tool will take more time, and I'm trying to make this as speedy as possible. So I'm going to use my blob shapes. So I'm going to come in here, and I have 4 here, as you can see. I'm just going to go ahead and click the first one and decrease the size a little bit. And I'm going to use these to create a couple shapes and overlay them. And the first one are going to be some white overlays, so I'm going to do this in some of the darker areas. So right here's a dark area, I'm going to add that. And it doesn't matter what color you have right now, because this won't be visible, but this is another dark spot here. One like here. And we'll put one up in the corner just for the sake of it. And what we want to do is create a new layer, and we're actually going to hide that layer we just added those, and make our color white. Go back to our brush tool and get a soft brush. And we're going to press Command and select this layer. And you can see those shapes are highlighted. And with the soft brush, we're going to go inside those dancing ants and just add some white highlights. And then when you're done, press Command D to deselect. You can see we have some white highlights going on, and we just want to set that to overlay. And that'll just make it a little more interesting. We can go ahead and delete that layer 1 then. And we're going to go ahead and do this again. And we'll get a different shape. We'll get this one. This time we're going to do it with black. So we're going to go into some of the lighter areas. So we'll go here. Have it a bit there, up here, and I mean, that's pretty good, but we'll put one down here as well. Actually, let's rotate this a bit. And put one here. Okay. And again, create a new layer. Hide that layer we added those shapes. Press Command and select that layer with the shapes. Get our soft brush with black this time. And we can make the brush a little smaller. It was at 700 last time. We'll bump it down using the bracket keys. Add a bit of black. There we go. Press Command D when you're done. And you can try setting it to overlay. Sometimes it won't look very good, so you could just leave it at normal and bump it down to like 11% opacity, which is what I did. And that kind of blends it pretty well with it still standing out a little bit. And that just adds some more highlights and shadows to this, makes it a little more interesting. Let's delete the layer we don't need, and then we'll call this one Dark Overlays and White Over. Now let's go ahead and create another new layer, and we're going to continue to use these blob shapes, but like I said, you can continue to use the pen tool to create your own. But I'm going to grab one of these, and we're going to add these as brushes to kind of make this more interesting. So all of these I'm going to put on their own layer as well, and they're going to be blue, so I'm just going to go ahead and select a blue to have them here, and I'm going to add a slight rotation on this guy, and I'm just going to place these throughout in different spots. So this one's going to be on top of this text box here, like that. Create a new layer. We'll add one down here, and then one over here. Actually, I don't want to do 3 of the same. I'm going to go ahead and get another one. We'll get this one, and I'll rotate it a bit. This one will be actually the bottom right corner of the text box. Right here. And we'll rotate this one again and have it coming out the top. Actually, we'll make that a little smaller. It's a little too big. Cool, and then we'll have a little one peeking out. Oops, I just realized that these need to be on their own layers, so let's go back. Alright, those are some blue shapes set up. You could do a little more. I have, what, 5 here. Let's double click on one of them and get our blue gradient on. So let's do that, and let's make this more up and down, with the blue more towards the bottom, the green more towards the top. It's not exactly 90, but it's about. Click OK, right click, copy layer style, and paste them throughout. Very cool. And then we can group these all together, call them blue blobs. Like I said though, you could just create a bunch of these shapes with the pen tool and then copy and paste them throughout. But let's go ahead and do the same thing then with some white. We're going to do a little less though, we don't want quite as many as we just did. Let me grab this one, put it on a rotation a little bit. Alright, cool. Now let's double click on those and get the white gradient. Copy it and paste it, and we can group these and call them white blobs. So this is looking pretty good. If you want to make any changes, you can go to this move tool and go to auto select layer. And if you want to move these around, you could click one of them and it will select it for you, and then you can move it. So maybe I want this a little more off. I think that's a little better. This one as well. I think that looks a little cooler. Actually, okay, we'll do that. And let's close these groups. Pretty happy with everything else. I think we're all right. Be sure to go back and turn auto select off though, because when you try to move things later on, that'll be a bit annoying. And create another new layer. And we're gonna grab the pen tool again and create a nice like big arch shape. So it's kind of gonna be the same as that first blue shape we made with the pen tool. Just kind of sweeping across here. Let's close it out and let me make a few changes to it. Something like that. Okay, cool. And this time we're just gonna go to selection, feather radius 0, click OK. Get the brush tool and get a soft brush again. I'm gonna have to scroll up and grab it. And let's make it a little bit bigger. So about 800, and let's kind of follow this. I'm just gonna do this in the darker areas again, and maybe like right there. Cool. Boom. Boom. Press D to deselect again, and then set that to overlay again. And then create another new layer, and this time just leave the soft brush up. We'll make it a little smaller, and you just want to go to some of the darker areas or colored areas and add a little bit of this. So just want to do one click like that into some spots here. You can even do it on the text like that, and something like that. Just sprinkle those out, and then we're going to set that to overlay and bump it down to about 75% opacity, but that just brightens up some of this and makes it a little more interesting. I'm not sure I like it on the text there that much though, so let's get the eraser tool and we'll erase a bit of it. And then create another new layer, and this is actually where that plugin comes into play that I mentioned earlier. Now I do have a brush for this too, but I'm just going to show you how this process works so you know. And you want to go to the Adobe Exchange where you can get plugins and add-ons, and you want to get the Comic Kit add-on. And if you're signed into your Adobe account and you add it, it should add it to your Photoshop for you. If you've watched my tutorials, you would have seen me use this a few times. But once you add it to your Photoshop, You want to create a new blank layer, go to Edit, Fill, go to Pattern, go to Script and check it, and then go to Screen Pattern X and click OK. And you want to use the same settings I have here. Now there's a lot you can do with this, but I just like to use it for the dots, so you can use other methods to get this. But the pattern scale here, we're doing 0.1, 0.1, 36, 5, 45, and then in the Advanced tab, you want to do 20 and 29. And you could change the shape. We're doing basic dots, so we're doing circles. And then click OK. And this will fill everything in with dots, which, okay, it looks like whatever, but we want to go down to the layer mask, add that, and with the layer mask selected, press Command I. And that'll make it black and therefore make everything invisible because it's hidden. And we want to get our blob shapes again and make a few blob shapes out of the dots. So if we grab one of these, we're going to make it smaller, and we're going to need white selected on our layer mask. And we're going to just add this to a few spots, usually the whiter areas, but I like to overlap it with some of the shapes. So maybe like right here, and we'll do one there as well. Big one there, and then finally let's do a small one. And we'll change the shape and do a smaller one down here. Cool, and that just gives it a bit more texture, and I think really finishes off the look. So this is the design done. Now we can do a couple color adjustments. So I like to enhance the color a little bit. I like the colors we use, they're nice, but if we go down to hue and saturation, we can bump this up just a little bit. I went to about like a darker blue, but you could go up to purple and even a pink and do this. So we're gonna go here, I'm at like plus 29, and then with the layer mask, we're gonna get a brush and get the soft brush again, get black, and we're gonna erase some of the areas here. So I'm gonna click in the middle, maybe the top right, here, here, a little bit more. Cool. And I don't know if you can tell the difference, but it just brings out some more colors if we want that. So this is it without it, and this is it with it. So you can see we brought in like a little bit more purple, and if we bump up that hue even more, we can get like to the pinks and stuff. You can see that's a very unique color scheme. It's a little more interesting. You can only really go to pink unless you have a different base color than what I started with, because the further you go, it gets a little dull. Like that doesn't look too good, that doesn't look too good. And yeah, it's the same the other way. You can do some green. Green looks good as well. But I just like to do a little bit of blue. So maybe like plus 16. And you can see when I do that, it's very subtle. It doesn't stand out too much, but I like the little bit of a darker blue. Now we want to add a social media section because that is a big part of this. If you're making a Twitch package, you're usually linking to other parts or other social medias, and then you can use this in other parts of the design. So if we go down to the text, what we want to do is duplicate the blue behind layer and the text layer. And you want to take that blue behind layer up with the duplicated text, like both of those, and bring them outside of the text group and group them in their own group. Now select them both and press Command T, and we're going to decrease the size a little bit like so. Now we're going to duplicate that blue behind layer and double click on it and make this one the white gradient, which we should have saved by this point. And we'll make it like a 90 degree, actually reverse 90 degree because our gradient's kind of backwards. So we want the white at the top. And click OK, and then that blue behind layer, you want to click, hold shift and bring it down just a bit. Go to our text, double click it and make it our dark color. So if you just click the color and click one of the dark colors in the gradient, that works. And I'm going to select, well, I'm actually going to make this white, and then the blue behind copy is fine, but let's select them both, press Command T, and I'm going to hold shift and just drag it further out so it's a little longer, but it stays the same width. Hit enter. Let me zoom out here a bit. It's still too big, but let's set up the text on the right side so we have room for a logo there. Select the group, press Command T, make it a bit smaller. Like so. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Maybe we even make it a bit wider. I'm holding Shift and Alt there to make it a little bit wider. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to bump down the blue a little more so it's a little more visible, and then I'm going to add a logo here. So I actually have a social icons pack that I posted in my Patreon. I'm going to get the color one. I'm going to get YouTube and Twitter because those are his social medias. You guys can just add the social media icons to your document from Google or whatever. Let's bring them above everything. I'm going to go to Layer, Align, Horizontal Centers, press Command T. Actually, we'll just move them over first. And actually, that's not a bad size. Maybe we don't hit Command T. I just realized I have Facebook. Alright, cool. I'm going to hide the YouTube one then, so we just have Twitter. And you can see the Twitter one is slightly smaller than the YouTube one, so I'm going to press Command T and just make that slightly bigger. So they're more consistent. And we're going to make these the blue gradient as well. I'm going to change the angle to about 54, click OK, and we'll bring the text, actually we'll change the text because this is not his Twitter. His Twitter is @JRSCPRK, and then we can move those logos slightly further over. And I'll move the text over as well. I'm going to double click the text and make it left align. That'll make it easier for when we change it here in a second. There we go, that's pretty good. I'm actually going to make the text and logo slightly smaller because I like a little more space in this. There we go. I'm holding Alt, by the way, there. And then let's get this group. We're going to call this one Twitter. Command J to duplicate. This one will be YouTube. And we'll just flip the icons and drag this one over. Let's copy that gradient to the YouTube logo though, and then instead of @Jurassic, that's Logan, and we'll move that and the YouTube icon over. That's a bit better, and let's group them together and call this socials. And zoom out, Command 0. Cool, and we can move this around to wherever. I kind of like it more towards the left. And we're pretty much done with our design there. So we can go ahead to File, Save As, and I will create its own little folder. So I have its own folder here, the tutorial folder. You can come down here to New Folder, save it wherever. And I'm going to call this Header. So let's save that. I'm going to close my social icons. And we're going to go ahead and create the other stuff now. So this is the Twitter header because it's the biggest size. I hope that was clear. Let's go ahead and create the Twitch banner. So let's go to New, and the Twitch banner dimensions are 1920 by 480. And we'll use the 300 resolution, press Create. And what we do is go over to the header, and I like to select everything and just put it into a group. And we'll call this the design or whatever. And then you just have to select that and drag it over. So we'll do that. You can see it's way too big for everything, and that's why we use the YouTube header, because it's the biggest size and we can just scale everything down, which is easier than scaling up. And you want to scale it down to the right and left edges align. So the left edge is a little off, the right edge is good. There we go. We'll drag it down. And boom, there is our Twitch header. We can go ahead and save that as Twitch header. By the way, I'm saving these as PSDs, which you would not be able to upload the PSD to Twitch or whatever. You'd have to save these as PNGs. I'll show you how to do that in a second. But you want to save all these individually in case you have changes to make. So I like to save them all as PSDs first. And then let's go ahead and create a new, and we'll do the avatar next. Now, the avatar in my case was a little different because Logan had his own little icon that he could use instead of text. But let's create an 800 by 800 document and do the same thing. Let's drag the design over. And you'll notice that the text always looks funny in an avatar. Ideally, you don't want text in an avatar, but we do want to hide the socials here because you don't want socials in an avatar either. So let's do this. Ideally, I wouldn't want these here. I would just want the design with some text or whatever. But I really would prefer this not be here at all, and then you add some sort of logo. And the thing is, when you do that, you can also add a circle. Since most social medias, their avatars are in circles, so if you click to add an ellipse, hold shift, and then just kind of center this guy. Make it the background color. And then it's real easy to just go ahead and add, I'm going to bring it to the very top. It's really easy to add just like a logo here, whatever, and then just move the design around to fit your needs. So I would do something like that probably, and then add Logan's logo to it. Which you can see is right here. So I could go ahead and drag that over, put it on top of everything, and then there we go. That's a lot easier. But if you don't have a logo and you have to use text, well, then just plop the text in there. Something like that. And I would probably move this blob down. And you can do an avatar like that, and we can save that as avatar. Cool. And let's close some of these now. Keep the header up. Let's go ahead and create the stream is starting design. It could also be the stream is ending or intermission, that sort of thing. But this is going to be 1920 by 1080. Because typically that's what most people stream at now. I know people have experimented with 4K. I don't know how many people stream in 4K, I'm not too familiar. But we're just going to do standard 1080. Click OK. And go ahead and drag the whole design over once more. And align it centrally again. This one you can see we're going to have to slightly scale up. So let's press Command T, hold Alt, increase it till the bottom and top are good. Like that, and we'll have to center it. By the way, since I've been doing this, I haven't really been centering it too much, so each time you kind of want to drag a guide out here and make sure you find your center point. So in the header, if I do this, you can see my guide goes right down the H or the G right here. So I always want to look for that when I do this, because if you just press Command T, you can see that these anchor points aren't aligned because technically the whole thing's not centered, but yeah. But there we go. Now this is set up, and we just have to change the text on the text group. You can leave the socials there. You might want to bring them down or move them to a different spot. It's up to you. Maybe we bring these socials up above everything actually, because I'm sick of the dots being in front of them. But let's change this text to stream is starting. You can see the starting part is way far down, so if we go to the character settings, which are in window character, and come to the vertical spacing, we can change this to about 125, 150, oh, 200, that's about right. And then let's double click the starting text and we'll make that blue. Press Command T, we'll make it a bit smaller and set it up a little nicer. There we go, and then you can make that text whatever you want, and you're pretty set. And we would save this as well as whatever stream is starting, what have you. I'll just do SIS. Okay. The next thing we're going to do are the panels. And we're going to go ahead to File, New, and these are very small. This is like the smallest thing. And the dimensions for these are 320 width by 160. Press Enter and hide the background right away, or double click it and then hide the background. You want to come back to the header and grab these social boxes. So if you're doing individual solo ones, you can grab the logos for these, but I'm just going to grab the text and both the white and the blue behind and bring them over and set them up here. I'm going to have to make them slightly smaller. You can have them touch edge to edge though, that should be pretty alright. Let's zoom in here. Yeah, that should be alright. I'm going to duplicate the white layer, and then the middle one I'm going to actually clear the layer style. And the top one I'm going to press Command T, hold Alt and Shift, and bring it down to fill in here. So you can still read the text, but we can put something on top of this one, which I'll show you in a second. So let's go back to the header and hide everything text related. So that'll be the socials and the text group. Take the design, Command J, Command E to duplicate and merge. So now we just have all these designs here. We can drag them over. Press Alt and click on that to make it a clipping mask to the white layer. And if I zoom out here with Command minus, press Command T, hold Alt and decrease the size. Press Enter and zoom in here. We can see we have our design on this guy. And then we would just add our logo here to the left, which I can do real quick with one of these social icons. But this would typically be like a donate button or whatever else. You can see we can set that up there. I also put a darker circle here. So I'd create a new layer and get the circle. Create it right behind the logo and double click on it, make it the color of the background the darker blue rather than a black. Press Command T and we'll decrease the size. And I like to have it kind of along the edge like that. And then, yeah, that should be pretty good. We can move the logo then to fit in there a little nicer with the text there. And then there are our panels. You would just flip-flop the logos and then put the text whatever you need it to be. You'd probably make the text left align here too, so it's a little easier to modify and it keeps it in the same spot. And then go ahead and save that as your panels. Also, you can move this design around to find a better thing you want. It also doesn't need to be this small, it could be a lot bigger with a little less going on. So it could be, like that would probably be better. But don't scale it up like I just did because now it's very blurry, as you can see. But yeah, these are very small anyway, but let's save that. And then we finally have our last thing, which is the face cam. So we're going to leave this here. We're going to need this design later on. And let's create a new document. This is going to be a 12 or a 1080p one, 1920 by 1080. Click OK, and we're also going to create a 721, which is 1280 by 720. So create that. The 721, we're going to double click this layer and just drag the background over and then close it because we don't need it. I'm going to press Command I on it so we can see that, and we're going to align it center. So typically the face cam is 720p. Now that's not always the case. If you have a 1080p face cam, you can use the 1080p background. In my case, I use a 720p cam, and most of my clients have, so that's why I use it. And we're going to duplicate this guy, and on the bottom one, we're going to double click, go to gradient, and use our blue gradient. Click OK. And then this one we duplicated, we're going to press Command T, hold Alt, and make it a bit smaller. And you can see we're kind of creating our border. Again though, it's not even, so we're going to have to even it out. So I'm going to press Alt and Shift, click the top anchor point, bring it down till it's about even. Press Enter, cool. And let's group this bottom layer one. Press Alt and click the black layer, which we can hide then. And then on the group one, go to the layer mask, click it, and then press Command I to inverse it. So now this group, nothing will be visible in here, which is what we want. And we can delete this guy. And I'm just going to go ahead and I could rasterize this, but let's just duplicate this. And the bottom one, again, we're going to press Command T, hold Alt, and increase the size. And once again, we're going to double click on that and reverse the gradient like we were doing earlier. Cool, and we have to adjust the size once more, so let's press Command T, holding Alt and Shift, let's bring this in a bit. Cool, there we go. And I'm going to group both of these together in another group, but they're still in the original group. And this is just going to be called border, and we'll make the big group the face cam, although we will be adding a few things outside the face cam. Zoom out. Let's create a new layer, and we're going to make it black, but it will be our dark gradient in a sec. Let's get a shape tool and get the rounded rectangle. And we're going to create a rectangle from left to right. It could be whatever thickness you want. I think that's a pretty good thickness there. I'm going to press Command T and make sure it's aligned with the edges, because if you adjust, you'll get pink guides that show you it's right on. So if I hold Shift, you can see I got a pink line. So that's aligned. Let's go over, hold Shift. That's aligned now. And let's move this up a bit. Cool. Command 0 to zoom back out. Double click on this and give it the darker gradient. And you could have this go in whatever direction. I'm gonna do a 90-ish degree. We'll actually offset it a bit. Yeah, okay. Click OK. And I'm not gonna do the duplicate and reverse thing. We'll just leave that alone. But we are gonna duplicate it. Press Command T, and we're gonna make it a lot smaller and put it on the edges. So I'm holding Alt to decrease the size there. And let's put it on either side. And we actually want it below the border, so let's put it all the way to the bottom. Duplicate it, bring it over to the left. Cool. And then let's add some more of our blob shapes. So let's get the brush tool, color, and a new layer. Grab one of our shapes. So I'm going to grab this one. I'm going to rotate it slightly. And we're going to have this over here to the bottom right. Cool. Let's actually grab this main pill at the bottom and bring it to the bottom below this. And let's create another new layer. Switch our brush to one of these other blobs. I'm going to rotate it again, make it smaller. Have this one in the top corner, like that. And then I'm going to create one outside of the face cam group, so at the very top. And this one's going to be very small, and it's actually going to be over top of the face cam. So let's get this second one. Again, we're going to rotate it, make it smaller, and maybe not that small, but we're going to have it like here in the corner. Like that. And this will just be overlaid here. We're going to cover this up in a second, so we'll put it there. Be sure to add your gradient to these then. And I like to again have the green more towards the top. And we can just right click copy layer style and paste it to the other two. And I'm not, since there's so few layers in this, by the time we're done, I'm not going to name them. So we're good. Let's go ahead to our header thing. Let's grab this design layer that we just used for the panels and drag it over. And we're going to put it on top of the border group. Alt click on that to make it a clipping mask, and you can see it's over top of our border. And if I zoom out here, you can see this looks pretty cool. I want to get some of the blue in here though, so we'll do it like that. Awesome. And if you want any areas like not visible, you can go ahead and erase them. So get the eraser tool, and let's say right here, since the border is blue and green anyway, I'm just going to erase this to use the bordered colors. Fade it into those dots. And then maybe do the same thing down here. And cool, so you can see that's the difference. But that brings some of the white and the dark color into the border. And then finally, we want to add our text and social media. So let's just grab our socials group. Instead of grabbing the socials group, I'm just going to grab both YouTube and Twitter individually. Drag them over, and we are going to put them at the top. We can put these actually outside the face cam too and have them overlay. So I did something like this. So YouTube in the right corner and Twitter in the left corner. Like that. And then duplicate one of these. I'll duplicate the YouTube one, and we're going to bring it down to the bottom left. And make sure this is in front of that blob. Zoom in a bit. We're going to make this bigger so it goes down. So it goes to the bottom of this pill and to the top of the bottom of the face cam, if that makes sense. So like that. And then we want it all the way left. There we go. open this up, we can delete the icons and go back to our normal text, which was Logan, and we can do the blue A and N again, and then make this bigger. Center it a little bit. And there we go. And then, by the way, this bar would be for like donation and follower notifications or whatever, so you can make it bigger, as big as you need. Hide the background because we don't want a background. And I usually just group everything together here. So then you can move it around, do whatever with it, and save it as a face cam. Awesome. And then when you're done with everything, you're happy, and you want to actually export it for use, you want to go to File, Export, Save for Web. And I save everything as PNG typically, but you can save it as a JPEG except the face cam or anything with transparency. If you want a transparent background, which you would for this, you've got to do a PNG. So do a PNG 24. Be sure transparency is checked in that case, and then go ahead to save. And you can save it wherever. But thank you guys for watching this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed. If it helps you, please leave a like. Subscribe for more tutorials. I really want to cover animated stream stuff. So be sure to let me know if you want to see that. Again, 100 likes for the download to all this stuff. Although it is available on my Patreon right now. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Qehzy, where I post some of my work. Follow me on Instagram, that's Qehzy. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.